Welcome back. So, purpose of this flight was to see if I could get the aircraft, up to like 4,000 feet and just establish sort of a cruise power setting and see how the cooling was going to work. Now that I hopefully got that intake scoop floor there secured, so it wasn't going to flap around again. And I have to apologize because I didn't get any audio from the radio on this particular flight. I made a mistake and didn't actually hit the record button on my little handy recorder thing. So yeah, we're just going to have to deal with that for this flight. But yeah, it was a bit bumpy out. Again, this was a morning flight, so I actually did 2 flights on this particular day, so one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So the second video for that I'm going to try and get out for you tomorrow. And then I've got another video that'll be coming probably on Sunday, so and that's going to be a pretty exciting one, so you make sure you don't miss that one. And as you'll see here, I've actually got my thermostat, or my thermometer thing set up there on the radiator again, there, right there, 133, 154. So that thermostat hasn't quite opened up yet. So we'll be able to see what that does with respect to the cooling on the engine. And once I get this, once we get up to altitude here, I'll cut over and show you the engine logs, and then we can finish off with the landing. So, because this flight was about 55 minutes altogether. You can see there from the elevation chart in the right corner there. Pretty long flight, so obviously I'm not going to show the whole thing. Once I got sort of up at altitude, it was pretty much the same thing. Although there was a fairly decent wind blowing at altitude from the north, so my southbound legs were pretty quick, and then turning around, the northbound legs took a little longer to come back because of the slowed ground speed, so that was fun. But yeah, aircraft was climbing nicely here, so you got 16 gallons an hour that I'm burning there. So that's just over 75% throttle. I think about 80% is where I had it set, and I'm slowly pulling the prop back here. But I believe I ended up climbing for the most part at about 31, 3200 RPM on the engine, which is around about 2000 RPM, well, a little bit higher on the prop. And as you can see, getting bounced around a little bit. And somebody there off to the south there was burning something, creating a nice little cloud, and you can kind of see the inversion there holding the smoke at a certain level. And there you can see now thermostat open 189 over 172, so 12 degree, actually, yeah, 16 degree drop there, so that's working nicely at that point. And it's still getting bounced around a little bit. It seems like for the most part when it's bumpy conditions like this, once you get it up to about 3,000 feet, it seems to settle down. And one of the things, and I haven't really had a chance to sort of talk to other canard owners, but I think what might be going on with the roll stability on this thing, because of the sweep of the wing, when you hit a gust that's coming, slightly cross angle, to the aircraft, it's going to hit the upwind wing. It's going to hit that at a more straight-on angle, and that's going to generate a lifting moment on that wing. Whereas the other wing that's in the shadow of the aircraft, or downwind of the fuselage, that's not going to hit that same gust with the same amount or the same angle. It's going to have a much more acute angle where it's hitting the gust, and so that wing isn't going to lift as much. So I think just the sweep of the aircraft, the sweep of the main wing, is causing this rolling thing. And be interested, I'll get a chance at some point to talk to some other canard owners and see if they have the same thing. Potentially it may have something to do with the width of the fuselage is also contributing to that, creating a larger wind shadow on that wing, on that side. But as you can see, once you get up to altitude and you're cruising along here, the thing is rock solid. So it's a very comfortable cruiser once you're up at altitude here. And with respect to if it is the sweep of the wing that's causing this roll thing when you hit crosswinds or whatever, I'm not sure what you can really do about that. It's it's the whole dynamics of the way that the airframe is laid out. So you'll see here pretty much once I got up to altitude and got stabilized here, I was pretty much cruising around 140 knots indicated, which I think is still reading slightly high. I did make another modification to the static port and I think it's getting better. And I've since ordered a used Piper pitot-static port, which is a blade style one, which I'm going to mount sort of, right underneath the fuselage there where the existing static port is, and try hooking that one up and see if that one works any better. So that one has a static hole at the back of the blade and then also a drain hole underneath, with the bottom of the blade sort of cut on a sloped angle, and maybe they did the calcs and stuff and got that to work. But anyway, it won't be too difficult for me. I've just got to basically hook it up and then drill some holes and mount it to the lower part of the fuselage there, and we'll see how that one compares. Now you can see him almost getting up to the altitude where it pretty much leveled off there, and 14 gallons an hour there. That's pretty much what I ended up maintaining. I think it was 68% was the throttle setting I had. The prop was mostly, I think, around about 3,000 RPM. There you can see temps 205, 199, so that's pretty much stabilized there, and that was agreeing quite a lot with what the coolant temperature was showing on the ECU. So I think, after it stabilizes, you're going to get an accurate reading there, even with the fact that the probes are just taped on the outside of the aluminum pipes that are, transporting the coolant, because those were within 1 degree of what the ECU was showing for that same time. So there you can see I've got 4,000 indicated. As I said, I think that's still reading higher, or the GPS is reading lower, but normally they're only out by a few hundred feet. And this time they're out by, I think, like 400 feet or something like that. As you can see, it was a nice day, and I was planning on this flight being an hour long, and it got pretty much to that, almost to the hour, and then that tape that I'd put across that inlet scoop there finally gave way. So I think what was happening there was just a little bit of play in that thing. Even when I taped it down, it was able to sort of vibrate up and down, and after an hour of flying, and that vibration up and down eventually started tearing on the tape, and it basically just ripped right down the center where I had it taped across there. So anyway, that wasn't the solution, just taping it with one strip of that white tape. So even though it was holding the other panel in place that had come off, it wasn't working for this one. I think it's because it was allowed to move a little bit up and down. And there you can see stabilized there, 199, 196. So I prefer that was a little bit bigger delta, but it is what it is, I guess. Potentially, with a larger radiator in there, you probably get a slightly larger delta, and these are all things that we can tweak going forward to get better performance. Just reconfigure things to get the best cooling possible. So overall with the cooling, I think it's decent enough for what I need to do, which is get the 40 hours flown off, and then transport the aircraft or fly the aircraft over to the west coast, where we can get things moving along with the guys that I'm working with over there, and then we can make improvements going forward. So just fast forward through the next I think 30 minutes. This is basically 30 minutes of flight, and it's interesting to watch this because you can really see the difference in the upwind speeds to the downwind speeds. So that was downwind there, and then turn around and head upwind, and it takes quite a bit longer for the upwind leg before I make the turn because of that strong wind at altitude. So it was pretty nice up there, as you can see, And I'm kind of looking forward to the time when I can actually go a little further away from the airport. But until I can do a flight where I can, fly for 2 hours straight, within distance of the airport here and not have any problems whatsoever, and get back on the ground and where there's nothing that needs to be addressed, I'm going to just basically keep doing what I'm doing here, just staying close to the airport, and just I'll potentially go a little bit higher as things go. But the purpose of this flight was really to see how how temperatures are stabilized if I just level off, and then what power setting could I maintain, because obviously the more power you can maintain, the more you can pitch the nose down and still maintain altitude and go quicker. But for this one, it was just a matter of setting a decent power setting there, to get about 140 indicated, and just see how the cooling would be with those settings. So let's sort of jump off and have a look at the engine logs. All right, I'm not going to take too much time on this, but just to show you how the temperatures and stuff were. So obviously, climb out here. Temperature does this little dip at around about 219 where that thermostat for the oil opens up, and then I'm already reducing power, so back to 89% throttle by then, and then just watching the temps climb up, and I was happy to let it go to about 245 on the oil temp. So as you can see here, got to 246, and that's when I reduced the power a little bit more, so I was at 82 still then. So, and then 3,000 on the prop RPM. So I brought the power down there to 76, or the throttle down to 76%, and you see that immediately. Well, actually, I think even that I was at 89%, and just bringing it down to 82% already leveled the oil temps there at 246. So it was still climbing at 89, and then at 82 it leveled off, and then I dropped it down to 76. And then I thought, oh, well, let me try, just to get a little bit more power, because I was still climbing. Let me try just increasing the proper RPM a little bit, which drives the engine RPM up. So I just added a little bit to that and got to 3,100, and then just basically let it sit there. So you see 73%. Well, actually, and then I ended up dropping it to 68%. So 68% throttle, pretty much 3,100 RPM most of the time there. And you can see the temperature drop down quite dramatically. So that thermostat and the new airflow is working really well. So then the temperatures really started dropping down. I was like, well, this is great. It's really coming down. So I just let it sit there for a while, and kept climbing. This wasn't a spectacular climb rate, but still, my temperature's down to 229, which I would consider normal operating temperature, because given that thermostat on this engine is designed to open at 219, I would say 229 is a very happy operating temperature for this. And the coolant was 189, and you saw there on the temperature readout there for the radiator was showing what was 199 over 180, 89 or 190 or something like that. So it was pretty much in agreement. And that whole rest of the flight where I was just cruising around at that same altitude, I kept the same power settings and the same prop settings, although I did drop the prop back down here a little bit just to see what that did. And it didn't really change anything that much. So I went from 3,100 down to 3,000, which it'll still drop to 29 sometimes. That didn't really have much of an effect at all. So somewhere in there is probably the sweet spot for the prop in cruise for this power setting. And so it wasn't until, back down here where I started to climb a little bit more. I think towards the end of the flight, I ended up getting a little bit slower in the climb, but and so the temperature went up a little bit, but not much, only still to 231. But down here got to 227. So yeah, pretty happy about that. And the rest of it was just the flight. So and then you can see down the bottom there where when you see the blue thing change from disabled to enabled, that's when the thermostat opened, and it was just open the whole time, all the way until I was coming in here on final, where the temperature dropped way down. So when I was on the descent there, oil temp went down to 193, and so that was working really well, and the coolant temp got down there to 154 right before touchdown. So yeah, pretty happy with all that. Anyway, let's get back to the video and watch the landing. Alright, so as I said earlier, what sort of ended this flight was right about here somewhere. I started to hear that sound again from the intake scoop, and I was like, well, I know what that is. It's not anything urgent, but why just live with it. I'd already flown for almost an hour here, so I just decided to begin my descent and just bring it into land. And been actually having fun there, starting at 4,500 indicated altitude there, and just doing a quick sort of bomb in descent has been actually kind of enjoyable, rather than doing a couple of different turns to get down. Seeing that you don't really have to worry too much about this engine with shock cooling or anything like that. So as you can see here, I'm kind of like northbound right now, and runway 35 was in use. So I was just thinking, well, I'll make my left-hand turn here, and then call tower, and they're gonna just give me a clearance to join a right base for 35 if I tell them where I'm at, and that's pretty much what happened. And you'll see in the next video, so after this, that white tape I used to hold down that inlet scoop floor, after that didn't work, I tried using like 3 layers of that metal foil tape, and same problem, that failed as well on the next flight that you'll see in the next video. And I think as I said, I think it's because this floor is kind of like this long extension, which isn't really supported in the middle. It's only supported where it's bonded on the part that's close down by the radiator, but then it's sort of have a curvature to it, and then it's basically just lightly attached at the front, so this parachute strap can pull out beyond it. There's nothing really supporting it in the middle, and so if it can get any vibration in there, just with air flowing over it, that's going to cause the whole thing to sort of vibrate. And where it was taped down, it was only really taped down on the leading edge, whereas before, when I had it bonded in place, it was sort of a bunch of small drops of or small little balls of composite, or like epoxy there to hold it down, and because it was attached from the bottom, it wasn't able to vibrate. But now it's because it's taped, and it's just taped on the top. There's nothing really holding it tight in there. So subsequent, or after that flight that failed, where I used the metal tape, I've actually taped it down much better, just with some regular heavy duct tape, and I've taped it down on the sides and stopped it from vibrating. And I believe it was successful on that flight, in terms of it didn't come loose on that flight. And so here you can see I'm making my turn. There's the airport below, and I'm just going to set myself up for a right downwind for 3.5. I'm a little close in, but there wasn't really anybody else operating at the airport at this time. It was around about lunchtime, and it was all quiet, so I pretty much had the whole place to myself. And this camera, and it's the same with the other camera, depends on the prop pitch as to whether that camera does that rolling shutter thing. It's got to be some sort of harmonic coming off of the prop, because you change the prop pitch and it smooths out, and then you look at the other camera and it's doing a rolling shutter thing. And I think it's obviously something to do with the fact that the way these Sony cameras work as well. But that one out there that you're seeing out on the wing is directly in line with the propeller plane, and same with the one under the wing on the left-hand side. So any sort of, I wouldn't say shock wave, but any sort of harmonic wave that's created, from the prop is felt by those cameras. You can see this one here is pretty much perfectly in line with the prop. So here I am now on the downwind. I'm setting up. I'm coming down fairly quickly because I've just dropped, 1,800 feet. And so I've been using about 125 knots as my gear down speed. It can probably handle more, but that seems comfortable. It reminds me I need to slow down before putting the gear down. There's no book value yet on, gear operating speed. Obviously going up, I'm getting it up, lifting up the gear around about 90 knots. And then, coming down, I'm just using like around about 125 as the maximum. And you can see I'm back down in the bumpy air again. But, in between the transitions from the fast moving high altitude air and the slower moving air, you're going across these sheer boundaries. I'll just wait to get the bumps. But it'll be interesting. I'm going to try and pay more attention to how these rolling moments come in and what direction I'm flying with respect to when they go and when they actually happen, and try and see if there's a pattern there whereby, where I think the upwind wing is hitting, a gust, whether that lifts more than the downwind wing. But you've got to know where the gusts are coming from, where the shear is. Alright, so that was that flight. As I said, I did a second flight later in the day, and I'll try and have that video for you by tomorrow. That was a shorter flight. It was only like just over 20 minutes or something. And then possibly the last flight that I got the video from for yesterday, I'll probably have that out by Sunday. So don't miss that one. That one's going to be exciting. Anyway, that's going to be the video. Thanks again for watching, and tune in again probably tomorrow for the next one. Cheers.